Figure It Out, Detectives by LakeAwen. Read for you by Chloe the Banana. Summary. Sally and Bruce go on a blind date. Both are smitten. Their kids are less impressed. Written for the DC Rarepair week, day 1. Single and ready to mingle. Speed dating, blind date, fake dating. So we're agreed, right? Percy asked. Bruce Wayne's definitely a monster. Or a god in disguise, Hazel volunteered. Or a god in disguise, Percy agreed. He slumped against the table. Now, how do I tell Mom? We just worry, Bee. Dick leaned against the banister. I've seen you get your heart broken too many times, you know. You have a habit of dating supervillains, Tim finished. I was just gonna say terrible people, but that works, Babs agreed. Except Selina. We love Selina. This fic is rated teen and up audiences, and no archive warnings apply. It is about 5,000 words long and 2 chapters. Chapter 1. He's too rich, Piper made a face. It's giving Nero. Leo nodded emphatically. No mortal is that good-looking. The kids are probably a front. Nico studied the publicity photo they'd just pulled up. There's a ton of weird stories around them. Too many to actually just be eccentric rich people. I know some really weird rich people, Rachel said slowly, but I'm with you on this one. So we're agreed, right? Percy asked. Bruce Wayne's definitely a monster. Or a god in disguise, Hazel volunteered. Or a god in disguise, Percy agreed. He slumped against the table. Now, how do I tell Mom? League of Assassins? Mother would never allow such an operation. That's probably true. A con? She's got money of her own from her books, Babs offered. She's not a billionaire, and she used to work retail in Grand Central Station, but she's living comfortably. No sign of... Hang on. Everyone turned expectantly. Babs's eyes narrowed. Damn it, she's been married twice, and both husbands are dead. A League operative would not bother with such a ruse, Damien insisted. No, but there's other options, Dick sighed. The most recent died in a terrorist attack. The first disappeared under mysterious circumstances. She made a significant amount of money after that disappearance, supposedly from an art piece. She hasn't been known to make or sell another piece before or since. A Black Widow? Steph asked. Damn it, Jason flung himself onto the couch. I liked her books, too. The real question is, do we tell B? Tim asked. There was a moment of silence. We can't let him walk in unwarned, Dick protested. He's the world's greatest detective, Duke countered. He should be able to figure this much out. I mean, he's definitely not, but this one's pretty obvious. Tim flopped onto the couch beside Jason. He survived Talia and Selina. I say we see how long it takes for him to notice, and then roast him mercilessly. Jason nodded appreciatively. I'm on board with that plan. Father would spot her immediately, Damien scoffed. Steph raised one eyebrow. Want to bet? You're on, Brown. Oh, Bab's voice changed, and she sat back from the laptop. One little snag. Jason and Tim scrambled off the couch, and everyone crowded around behind her wheelchair. Shit. Language, Dick said absently. This guy's practically Jason's lankier twin, Duke said. I think the language might be justified. Both of them, Jason groaned. Fucking adoption bait is what they are. All right, Steph straightened. Placing bets now. $20 said she's evil, but Bruce adopts the kids. That's a non-starter. Dick's voice was mournful. It's just a matter of time now. I will take that bet. Everyone turned to Cass. Tim's eye narrowed. What do you know? She smirked. Figure it out, detectives. 2 days earlier. Sally tugged nervously at the hem of her dress. She still wasn't sure how Lois had talked her into this. The woman definitely had a way with words, and not just on the page. It wasn't like Sally hadn't been on any dates since Paul died. All right, there hadn't been many, but they still counted. A blind date, though, even with a friend of Lois. What had Sally been thinking? Sally? A deep voice asked. She turned, looking up, and up. She registered sharp blue eyes and neatly combed black hair, a dimpled chin. Vaguely familiar, but she wasn't sure where from. Maybe one of the same publishing events she'd met Lois at. The concerningly handsome man held out his hand. Lois said you'd be wearing blue. Oh, yes. Sally shook the offered hand, trying to appear calm. It's my son's favorite color. She hadn't meant to say that, but if he wasn't cool with her having kids, this date was over now anyway. He smiled instead. Those blue eyes didn't soften, but the hard lines of his face did, into something almost fond. It's a beautiful color on you. Sally cleared her throat, trying not to blush. Gods, all he'd done was shake her hand and smile. Had it been that long since a man had been decent to her? A very good-looking man. A traitorous part of her brain chimed in. Damn it, she did have a type. I believe her table is in the back. Shall we sit down? Yes. Yeah, that sounds good. Sally flushed. I'm usually better with words, I swear. Bruce led her through the restaurant. It was nicer than any she'd set foot in before, but not quite fancy enough to be intimidating. I'm never good with words, I'm afraid. My oldest son claims he's assembled a whole glossary of definitions for my awkward silences and grunts, complete with sound bites. Sally laughed, her shoulders relaxing a little. Their table was tucked away in a back corner, plants and painted tapestries providing some level of privacy. She appreciated that. She wasn't exactly a celebrity, but her books had been successful enough that she sometimes had people approach her in public, and it was nice not to have to worry about being recognized this evening. You have kids? Bruce smiled again as he pulled out her chair, a trace of wryness creeping in. I do. They are all simultaneously the best and worst thing about my life. Oh, I know that feeling a little too well. She hadn't meant to talk about them so soon. It was always difficult to talk about Percy to strangers, and bring up either of their ages meant bringing up her relationship history, and that was... She needed a glass of wine first. The waiter arrived right on cue. They ordered drinks and fell into awkward silence as he left. How had Lois convinced her to agree to a blind date of all things? Well, she could at least throw her to the wolves for a conversation starter. How do you know Lois? She's a good friend of the family. I met her husband Clark through work, and our sons are close. He cleared his throat. Trust her judgment. Sally snorted. I don't think I would have agreed to a blind date for anyone else, but Lois can be very convincing. I know exactly what you mean. Have you known her for long? About 2 years. We also met through work. You're a journalist. His tone sharpened, and she shook her head quickly. No, I write fiction. I finally wrote that novel I'd always been thinking about, and I got lucky. Found a great publisher, hit the market at just the right time, and apparently people really enjoy it. I just published a second book set in the same world. What was the title? Love Songs of the Gods was the first. He gave a short hum of recognition. Don't sell yourself short. It's not just luck. You're one of my son's favorite authors, and that's not an honor he gives away lightly. If you have his admiration and Lois's friendship, you must be very talented. Some talent, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And tea. A lot of tea. She laughed. The waiter returned to take their orders, and Sally took a sip of her Chardonnay as he left them alone again. I take you haven't read it yourself? I admit I haven't. Most of the reading I do these days is for work. What do you do? I run a company in Gotham. We do a variety of things, but my favorite part is probably the research and development side of things. We have a good department, and it's very satisfying to see everyone's ideas become reality. Sally could read between the lines there. The suit, the casual mention of a whole R&D department, even the private table probably wasn't solely for her benefit. He was being modest, but Bruce clearly did very well for himself. Well, so did she these days. It wasn't as though she could be accused of gold digging. Are you from Gotham originally? I am. I travel often, but I come home eventually. Gotham is... She's a hard city to love, but I do. I know her reputation, and I can't say it's inaccurate. I'm in a position to do some good, to make it better for the people who live there, and that is a privilege I am thankful for. That was the most she'd heard Bruce speak all evening, and his whole bearing shifted. He hadn't exactly relaxed, but the nerves slipped away, and his already deep voice dropped even further, carrying the same fondness as when he mentioned his kids. God, that voice was doing things for her. Sally took another sip of wine. She? Bruce looked vaguely embarrassed. It's a city with a lot of personality. Sally didn't laugh. She didn't want him to think she was mocking him. No, I get it. Some things and places have a life all of their own. Libraries, swords, ships. Percy, my son. His father is a sailor. I'm familiar with the concept. What's been your favorite project recently? Ah, Bruce paused as the waiter brought out their plates. That would have to be the Todd houses. They provide harm reduction services and safe housing for women and children across Gotham. My son and I worked together on them. Jason was missing for a time. He was kidnapped when he was 15 and lost many of his memories, so we thought he was dead for nearly 3 years. The shelters were something I'd been thinking of starting in his name, but when he came back home, I asked him to work on them with me. I trust his judgment much more than mine on certain subjects. The shelters are so much more than I could have made them alone. Tim, my third son, worked with our research lab to develop a cheaper formula for Narcan, so we're able to make it widely available at zero cost, not just in the Todd houses, but in other cities across the country. Bruce finally paused, glancing down at his plate. It hasn't been my project alone, but it's been an honor to work on it with Jason and Tim, and I couldn't be prouder of them. Sally wasn't sure if she was still breathing. Oh, gods, Lois, what did you send me? She took a sip of water, trying to steady her hands. Percy was kidnapped a few years ago. He lost almost all of his memories, and it took him months to find his way home. I still have nightmares about it. Bruce set down his fork, watching her closely. I think I always will. She nodded. He was 16. And he's home now? He just finished college in California. He works at a camp on Long Island. He had to grow up too fast, for a lot of reasons. But I am so proud of him. Of all of them. Bruce nodded slowly. You mentioned children, plural. Sally took a deep breath. There didn't seem to be much point in holding back, now that Percy's disappearance had been brought up. After all, the man had kids of his own. He had to have some kind of relationship history. Percy's my firstborn. He's 21 now, going on 22. Estelle's the youngest. She's 5. Annabeth is Percy's partner, and I count her as one of my own. She's been around since they were 12, and she's not going anywhere. They have friends and cousins who are always in and out of the apartment, so sometimes it feels like I have a whole lot more than just those 3. She hadn't realized the smile he'd given her at the store was fake, until she saw the real thing. It was quieter, almost surprised, like he didn't expect it. I never know how many kids to claim when people ask me. I have 4 sons, 1 daughter, a foster son, and at least 2 girls and a boy who claim they aren't my children, but continuously show up to eat my food and boss me around anyway. Sally snorted, almost choking on her wine. You don't strike me as an easy man to boss around. Bruce lifted one eyebrow. Were you thinking of trying? Sally paused, glass at her lips. Buy me dinner first. I'm working on it. It was nice, feeling pretty and flirty again, having a handsome man tease her, and being able to let go a little. She still had secrets, but at least a couple of the big things had been dropped, and Bruce hadn't so much as flinched. Maybe, possibly, Lois had known what she was up to. Sally let herself relax, talking more easily. Conversation seemed too easy, even if Bruce couldn't be called chatty. The wine was good, but she couldn't give it all the credit for how smoothly dinner passed. Bruce asked about her writing, her taste in tea, where she'd traveled on her book tour, and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. That quiet smile flickered into view every so often, and she found herself trying to draw it out, enjoying the challenge. There was a little part of her brain, admittedly, that kept looking for the catch. Nothing, in her experience, came without one. It would be just her luck if he turned out to be a monster in disguise. Lois was smart, though, right? She would have at least caught any obvious red flags, especially since Bruce and she had known each other for years. It wasn't until the waiter brought their bill that the other shoe dropped. Thank you, Mr. Wayne, he said as he went to cash them out. Sally set her glass down. Wayne. Bruce. Gotham. Oh gods, she was on a date with the Bruce Wayne. He looked familiar because she'd seen him on a magazine cover last month. He watched her steadily. It was obvious he'd noticed her freeze. Sally? I just put two and two together. Feeling a little stupid. That was not my intention. He folded his hands on the table. Dating is difficult. You've got quite the reputation. The papers see what they want to see. That's why you were so anxious when you thought I might be a reporter. Bruce made a sound of acknowledgement. Is this a problem? Sally thought of her past, of the secrets she was still keeping. She thought of that smile, and the way he spoke about his city and his family. She thought about Gabe, and the shelters Bruce had described starting with his son. Sally took a deep breath. Hell, she did a god. She'd promised herself she wouldn't waste the rest of her life. Why not date a billionaire after one of the best dates she'd ever been on? No, she said finally. It's not a problem.